The moment the elevator doors slid open on the 42nd floor, time seemed to slow, as if the building itself was holding its breath. A tired janitor with cleaning gloves still damp from disinfectant stood frozen under the bright daylight pouring through glass walls, while the most powerful woman in the company looked at him with eyes full of fear, not authority. In a place built on money, status, and control, something fragile and human was about to collide with pride. What followed in those 7 minutes would quietly change lives, reputations, and the meaning of dignity forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us humanity still exists in unexpected places, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel Kindness Touch. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that may be hurting in silence. The janitor's name was Ishaan Mercer, a 37-year-old single father who started his mornings before sunrise and ended them long after daylight faded. Every day was a careful balance between survival and love. He cleaned office floors by day while raising his 6-year-old son Caleb, who waited for him at a small daycare near the building. Ishaan's life had narrowed into a routine shaped by grief and responsibility after losing his wife to illness 3 years earlier. Since then, dignity had become something he protected quietly, like a fragile glass he carried through crowded halls without letting anyone notice the cracks. The corporate tower where Ishaan worked was a monument of glass and steel, always glowing in daylight like it never slept. People in tailored suits passed him daily without seeing his face. He was part of the background, the invisible force that made their polished world possible. He never complained, he never asked for more. All he wanted was stability for his son and enough peace at night to sleep without guilt. Yet even in his quiet obedience, he carried a sense of pride that came from honest work and unconditional love. On that particular day, the building buzzed with tension. A major merger meeting was underway, and executives moved quickly, voices low and urgent. Ishaan noticed it in the rushed footsteps and tight expressions as he polished the marble floors near the executive wing. Sunlight flooded the corridor through tall windows, illuminating dust motes in the air and reflecting off framed awards lining the walls. It was in this corridor that everything shifted. The CEO, Serena Whitlock, had built her reputation as unbreakable. At 42, she was known for sharp decisions, fearless leadership, and an emotional distance that intimidated boardrooms. But that morning, her world was cracking. A high-profile investor had cornered her, threatening to expose fabricated rumors that could destroy the company's value and her career. The pressure had followed her into the elevator lobby, where she realized she was no longer alone with her power, but alone with her fear. When the investor approached, Serena's mind raced. Cameras watched silently, staff passed nearby. Any sign of weakness would be weaponized. Desperation pushed her toward an unthinkable idea. She noticed Ishaan standing nearby with his cleaning cart, head lowered respectfully, unaware that he was about to be pulled into a moment far beyond his job description. She moved toward him, her voice controlled but her eyes betraying panic, and asked him for help in a way that shocked even herself. She needed the illusion of intimacy, a distraction, something to make the threat retreat. She asked him to pretend affection, to stand close, to shield her with a lie that looked like confidence. Ishaan felt the weight of her request immediately. He understood what was being asked without needing details. His first instinct was refusal, not out of fear, but out of respect for himself. He had lived too long being overlooked to suddenly become a prop. But then he saw her hands trembling slightly, saw not a CEO but a human being cornered by cruelty. In that moment his thoughts went to his son and the kind of man he hoped Caleb would become. Not powerful but kind, not rich but brave. He agreed not because he was told to, but because compassion outweighed discomfort. He stepped forward, placing himself between Serena and the threat, standing with quiet steadiness. He did not overact. He did not take advantage. He simply offered presence. The investor, confused and calculating, hesitated. The image disrupted his plan. He retreated with a forced smile, his leverage weakened by unpredictability. The danger dissolved as quickly as it had formed. Those 7 minutes passed under the glow of midday sun, watched by no one who mattered and everyone who would never know. When it ended, the hallway returned to its polished calm. Ishaan stepped back, returning to his cart, expecting nothing more than to resume his work unnoticed. Serena, however, stood changed. Gratitude filled her chest alongside shame for how easily she had reduced him to a solution rather than a person. The rest of the day unfolded normally for Ishaan, or so he thought. He finished his shift, picked up Caleb, and returned to their modest apartment, where dinner was simple and laughter was priceless. But the seed planted in that hallway had begun to grow elsewhere. Serena could not shake the image of the janitor's dignity, the way he had protected her without asking for reward. It unsettled her more than the threat itself. Days later, Serena requested a full review of the building's support staff. She learned about Ishaan's life, his punctuality, his spotless record, and the quiet way he covered extra shifts without complaint. She learned about Caleb and the daycare fees he struggled to pay. Each detail deepened her resolve, not out of charity, but out of respect. When Ishaan was called to the executive floor again, fear tightened his chest. He assumed he had crossed an invisible line. Instead, he was met with sunlight, calm, and an offer that redefined his future. Serena acknowledged what he had done, not as a favor, but as an act of character. She offered him training for a facilities management role, flexible hours, and a salary that meant security. She did not present it as gratitude, but as opportunity earned. Ishaan accepted with humility, knowing this was not luck but alignment. He worked hard, learned fast, and proved that trust placed in the unseen could transform entire systems. Over time, he became a leader who remembered every face and every struggle because he had lived them. The building changed too. People began to greet each other. Invisible walls softened. Years later, on a bright afternoon filled with sunlight and quiet celebration, Ishaan watched Caleb run through the lobby, laughing freely. Serena stood nearby, no longer just a CEO, but someone who had learned that power was meaningless without humanity. Their lives had intersected for 7 minutes, but the impact stretched far beyond time. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can rise from the most unexpected places and change destinies, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your interaction helps spread stories that heal. Before we end, please comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. In a world obsessed with status, it was a janitor's dignity and a moment of compassion that rewrote everything. And sometimes that is all it takes to remind us who we truly are.